Welcome to Red Ice Radio. My name is Henrik. It's great to have you with us today. The website is redicecreations.com. We do radio on Thursdays and Sundays, and don't forget to check out our webcasts as well. Now, if you're a regular listener, you'll probably noticed that we're doing a kind of marathon with the speakers that will be attending the Alternative View event in London at the end of May this year. We are continuing with that trend here today. We've invited Tony Goslin to the program, another speaker that will be at the AV2 conference. If you're interested in reading more about this event, go to avii.co.uk or thealternativeview.co.uk and take a look around at that website. All information is up there for you. We'll be there, and we hope to see you there as well, of course. Now, Tony is behind the website bilderberg.org that you might have come across in your searches for information about the Bilderberg meetings. He has been covering the Bilderbergers for quite some time. He has also been looking into media and ethics. He's been involved in the NUJ, the National Union of Journalists. He has a few other websites that you can take a look at as well. 911forum.org.uk and dialectradio.org.uk. He has his own show as well. On the Red Ice website, we'll have these links available for you so you can find them more easily. And beyond going over some Bilderberg material today here with Tony, we're going to begin to talk a little bit about some of the current issues, one of these being the recent shootings in Northern Ireland. So some recent stuff here coming up. But let's get this program here going right away. Thank you for coming on Red Ice Radio, Tony. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Henrik. Thanks for asking me.
Just to set a little bit of background of you, so to speak, here, Tony, tell us just briefly about the Bilderberg.org website, when you started up and why.
Well, I mean, I'd worked in the 90s. In the 1990s, I started with a background in aviation, and I moved in the 1990s to work in broadcasting. And I was working in London for the BBC's London station and covering the terrorist outrages by the IRA in the early 1990s. I was doing that sort of stuff for about 3 or 4 years as a researcher and as a reporter. And then I kind of got disillusioned with not being able to do the sort of stuff I wanted to do on the radio. I found it was just sort of being blocked. And so I went on to do some environmental campaigning, and that's where I first heard about the Bilderbergs. I was in a field, or sort of actually a sort of piece of waste ground, really, in just on the Thames next to Wandsworth Bridge, and a chap came up to me. We were doing sort of land occupation, and a chap came up to me and said, "Have you heard about these Bilderberg guys? They actually control the whole of the Western world, and they meet up in secret, blah blah blah." Well, of course, I'd heard this kind of thing before, but dutifully wrote down in my notebook the word Bilderberg. Anyway, it just so happened at the time, back in my office in Oxford, I had access to the Reuters article database, so I just thought, well, I'll put this thing into Reuters, see what he's talking about. And up popped the names of really the most powerful people in the Western world, and sure enough, there were secret meetings where the press was not being informed these meetings were taking place, even though there's most of the heads of the royalty of Europe were there too, as well as the World Bank, IMF, and all the rest. And so I thought, well, I mean, this does seem to be a much more powerful organisation than most of the press out or public know. And so I put up the names of the 1996 list of who'd attended these meetings up on the internet. Now, of course, the lists are one of the most interesting parts of it, but you know, the lists are likely to be well, they are. I know they're partial. Certain very controversial or very, very powerful and well-known people, say, for example, somebody like Prince Charles or Prince Philip or the Queen, if they're attending these meetings, they don't really want their names on the list. So what they do is they sort of cherry-pick out of the list, the Bilderberg list, that some of the people that they think might draw too much attention to the meetings. Yeah, I mean, I have evidence of that. I've met people who have seen people at meetings, been to meetings, got evidence of people being at the meetings, and they're not on the official list. So really, that's how Bilderberg.org started, as a sort of website of lists of who's been to these meetings.
Interesting. And about the name, I've had this up on the as a question on the program before, and I know that the Bilderbergs were discovered by a journalist in the Netherlands at the Bilderberg Hotel at that point. But what I've been wondering, and maybe you have a good answer for that, is why would they call themselves the Bilderberg? Because wasn't this a name that was kind of given to them by the journalist that discovered them?
No, it was the Bilderberg Hotel they met in, which is owned by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands now. He was a very central figure in setting up the Bilderberg conferences. Really important guy. I mean, he's dead now, but he was actually a German by birth, and he joined enthusiastically, although he denies it was enthusiastically, because I mean, you can't sort of at the early stages of Nazism. It was quite easy really to avoid getting involved, but he didn't. He actually went and joined the SS, and it's a bit embarrassing really for him, because then he became quite a major figure in European politics after in Holland, after the Second World War. So there's this sort of core of a serious problem with Nazism at the core of the foundation of Bilderberg. But I mean, if you're looking at Prince Bernhard in a way was a kind of frontman or manager for it. But the whole idea of Bilderberg was devised by the US. It was devised by the Council on Foreign Relations War and Peace study groups actually during World War II, and it was rolled out after World War II as part of the the American deal as to, well, we are going to help in World War II, but we are also going to try and control the outcome after the war. And it's a power, political influence network and financial influence network, because you put those two things together, you've got quite a lot of power. You've got all the bankers together, really to influence politics in Europe, and to be a kind of global, a Western think tank, like the Western think tank. And if you have a look at the list of the names of people that go to these things, the politicians, the bankers, and the royalty, and the media people put together, plus, of course, all the main oil companies, of course, Royal Dutch Shell and BP, people like that, then you really do have a list of the most powerful people in the Western world, at least financially. They certainly control most of the money in the Western world, and there's always people from the Bank for International Settlements, this secretive bank, which is right at the heart of the Bretton Woods global financial architecture, which has failed so miserably in the last few months.
Okay, we might return a little bit later then and talk more about the Bilderberg if we have time for that. But I know, Tony, that you want to touch upon some recent stuff that has been going on in Northern Ireland primarily, and maybe you can just give us a little bit of background story for those who might not have followed this particular story. Well,
over the last couple of weeks, we've had a emerging of terrorist attacks in Northern Ireland. This is really quite frightening. We've had 3 people killed, 2 soldiers from the Royal Engineers at Mazarine Barracks in Antrim, and we've also had a Catholic policeman from the PSNI, Police Service for Northern Ireland, has also been killed. Now, this is particularly interesting for me. Immediately, the most significant is the fact that we've got private security, a private firm doing the security on the army barracks in Mazarine. Now, even though there were several shots fired, some initial shots from the car, and then apparently 2 gunmen ran over and literally shot these guys, at least killed a couple more. So it's two soldiers killed, and there was no returning fire from the army base. Now that's immediately a bit questionable and suspicious, but I'm glad to hear the private security have now been sacked from doing these army base duties in Northern Ireland. I mean, I can't imagine why several shots can be being fired and then there's no return fire. That sounds really bizarre to me straight away. But obviously there is some genuine sentiment in the Republican movement in Ireland. I mean, having lived in Northern Ireland, forgive me if I'm a little bit too jargonistic, but what I'll try and do is just lay out the problem over there. Is essentially you've got a Bosnia waiting to happen. You've got 2 communities still tensions between the Protestant, that is to say, the loyalist and unionist community, and the Catholics, that's the Republicans and the nationalist community who want the United Ireland. There's still tension, and what's happened is literally just the day before this attack took place, Sir Hugh Orde, who's the rather suspect boss of the Northern Ireland Police, announced that they decided that they had to bring in their British intelligence back into the game in Northern Ireland. Now, as part of the agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, back in 1998, I think it was, which has brought peace to the province, and that was one of the things which was, the idea was that they were going to normalise security. So that is to say, put it back into the hands of the police, get the army intelligence who had, through the Force Research Unit and other covert organisations in Northern Ireland, had been basically planting bombs. I mean, we don't. What the reason I think that this has happened is a mixture of two things. We've got, first of all, we've got a genuine Republican splinter sentiment, which is saying we're not having the SAS and British Special Forces and British intelligence back in Northern Ireland, because we know what they've done before. They've been aiding the loyalists to blow people up, and we're not having them back here. So there's a genuine sentiment there. But then it's also possible that this was a kind of provocation with British agents that may have infiltrated these Republican splinter groups and be egging them on. So the idea being then, of course, that there is a justification in itself. These attacks may be then a justification in itself for bringing back more of the British intelligence, or the MI6 type, MI5 type people, and particularly this group, the Special Reconnaissance Regiment, the SRR. They are like a sort of intelligence version of the operational side, which is the SAS, and this whole area is extremely questionable, extremely secretive and unaccountable, and of course it undermines the peace process, bringing these people back in. So I would say there's a sort of manipulated, it's manipulated by British intelligence splinter groups. So, the good thing about it, of course, is that we've got the broad spread of the Republican view is that this is not clever and that it must end immediately. So this is a very tiny number of people, but all you need, of course, is a tiny number of people to start to destabilise a peace process, if they're doing it in the way that they are, which is to. I mean, it's interesting that they've gone for the sappers. The sappers being the sort of nickname term for the Royal Engineers, because these are explosives experts. So they will feel, the idea, it seems to me, is to make sure that the British Army's explosives experts are the ones that are seen to be under attack. So they don't necessarily have a level view of what's been going on here, and they maybe take a more emotional view, because it's really important, of course, that explosives experts know how false flag attacks happen. Say for example, some kind of NATO operation, for example, like Operation Gladio. And this is when this first happened. This is my immediate thoughts were: is this something from Operation Gladio, which went right throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and was basically NATO intelligence planting bombs, pretending to be the Soviets and pretending to be left-wing splinter groups. Now they've been basically found out, although many of the press and public don't know about Operation Gladio. Is one of the most important, I think, things that's happened really since the Second World War. It shows that we've got people within the superstructure of our establishment who are actually just blowing us up and trying to blame whoever it is that's the bogeyman of the day.
How about the timing then? I mean, again, we're talking about the British military intelligence here, potentially being behind this, and of course, one question is, why do they want to destabilize the region now again? Then we have this period of more of a quiet for a while now, and